Howdy, everyone.
Aloha.
uh, so this is Andrew, and I'm with Kalepa, and we're gonna chat a bit about a bunch of stuff. Probably gonna hit on music and some symbols and analogies, and throw out sorts of fun stuff. So yeah,
Per usual randomness.
what was that?
Said per usual randomness.
Yeah, we are the random. So yeah, I guess. So you're actually, I want to ask you a bit about this story. So that story that you were talking about a bit before we started recording, is that going to be like a screenwrite that you want to get filmed, or like how is that
Oh,
going?
the with the maps.
Yeah, yeah, like that
Um,
stuff.
that is that'll be if obviously if I have my way,
Yeah,
if I can
yeah,
figure it out.
ideally,
Um, the the hope though is a little bit ridiculous, but comic books,
okay.
novels, TV show, movies,
The whole 9 yards.
video game. I have a pretty crazy video game idea, but I feel like it would be. I don't also want it to be made because it's a little too dystopian.
Oh,
Pretty freaking cool idea, but it's a little too. Everyone lives in a video game now.
hmm. Oh,
um, yeah, so that was one cool thing about it was, I mean, it all sprang from a music video, but
hmm,
it quickly developed into this like this could go anywhere.
hmm,
And it's rich. It's not
yeah,
like spread out and to its to its breaking point, just so we can
yeah,
have as many things as possible. It's like no, there's just all these stories just kept popping up and all these different ways to go with it.
hmm,
So it'll be a lot of different stuff
yeah.
if I can figure it out. But
Nice.
that's
Yeah, that's a that's a lot of stuff. I was like, oh, just thinking a nice screenwriter,
yeah.
and now you're like, oh,
But the thing with it though is it starts like it's a compounding thing.
right.
Like I'll get the comic book done or sell one of these scripts that
Hmm.
can get made without people even knowing it's a part of this universe.
Right.
Um, Something like that that you can ease into it. Like obviously the whole, if all that is accomplished, that's like that has to compound. Uh,
Right.
you're not just gonna
Start
berserk
out. Yeah.
throw everything and it's all just gonna stick. So you
Yeah.
have to be strategic about it and yeah, build an empire in a way. Um, Marvel it, don't DC it.
Marvel. Oh man.
Later.
Yeah. I I was thinking about this, like the difference. I was thinking about how screenwriting works. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to do that. I mean, I'm not very, at the moment, I haven't been practiced in writing fiction. I've mostly just been writing poetry. Uh, so, and it's been weird because I've been like looking back at the fiction story idea that I've had past like 2 days. I've been like, oh yeah, because I sent you that origin story, and
Apology.
yeah, and I was thinking about, I was like, oh, like I was looking through the I don't think I was looking through the origin story. I was looking through the plot, like that I just mind dumped into this one document. And like the only structure was just like next line was just like another thing that sort of was significant to the story. So it was that sort of document. And I was like, oh, this is not, it became more allegorical than I wanted it to be.
Okay.
Um, I want it to be uh, I want to tread this like really thin line between like this like Tolkien-esque sort of mythology, but like I don't want it to be just like so similar to Tolkien. I don't want to like rip off him. And I want it to
Yeah.
be important in this sense so that it's like different enough that it can be useful and not just
Yeah.
repeat book of
Another.
Tolkien.
Yeah.
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 Like so
I totally feel that.
and but the thing is it became more allegorical because the main character became more of like a prophet sort of and I was like, no, I don't no, that's not right. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Um so I'm trying to figure out how I
Don't be
can
afraid to take it. Uh,
yeah,
to take it out, or not take it out, but to go with it. Just to get it down. Like however it comes out, it comes out.
right.
You know, this these all these stories have changed a lot as I've learned what actually happened.
Hmm.
You know, kind of thought I knew what happened and how it was and how all this went down. But like as you dive into it more and as you keep chipping away at it,
Hmm.
um, you know, this whole universe started out very Iliad, Odyssey, um, not like an homage, but like a bit kind of allegorical to
Hmm.
it. You know, a bit like using a lot of names, using like trying to do like a post-apocalyptic Iliad
Right.
or Odyssey,
Okay.
and so there was a lot of names that were used.
Hmm.
You know, like Menelaus and Atrides and Tydides and
Yeah.
Diomedes and all of this, Idomenus, and so all of these. There's all these um, old world, you know, Greek mythology, or not Greek mythology, but Greek kind, Roman kind names.
Hmm.
And so at a certain point when it became less, when it became like this actual universe and not just this little story, that wasn't legitimate anymore. That wasn't, you know, it was kind of corny.
Hmm.
And so at that point I had to start changing names and just kind of making it my own. Um, but I had all of this framework to go from, all of this work, all this stuff to go from. And
Right.
so I would rather have done it that way than to be like, no, I don't want it to be super allegorical or like whatever. And so I just never start or never really can dive in because I've
Right.
set limitations,
Yeah.
uh, to where you just kind of need to just explore. And as far as I go, you
Yeah.
know, just go with it, and then you can come back and you can be the master architect that is like, nope, we need to completely shift this around, and you can do that, and it
Yeah.
it takes work, but um
Yeah. I think
yeah.
my my aim right now is to do like a sort of do like short stories and do like parts of this plot that I like. Because in a way, a chapter is sort of a short story. Um,
Totally, that's
you're sort
I
of like connecting and then just like figure out how to connect them later on.
yeah.
Um, and so I think I just need to make sure I write. But the thing is, what I want is it to be almost, um, I want it to be like my poetry because my poetry, I just like stuff it with symbols that like, that I guess they're just symbols that trying to think of how to explain this because they're symbols of like my psyche. So like I think a lot of the times just in symbols, and so I'll just like stuff like a symbol into the poetry, not like forcefully, but I'll make it into something. So like one of the poems that I have, I used blocks of concrete to describe uh, memories basically of time, and then like
Mm.
I'm building as I continue through life. I build up this sort of these like houses or whatever, um, and then there's like different aspects of it. So I use the monastery for more of the religious sense, and then the house sort of for like family, and then uh, I used the tower for my ideas and sort of philosophy, and then there was the court for more of like uh, I guess axioms in a sense, and like what's right and wrong, sort of in the philosophy, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so I want it to be like that, but it's also like this. It's this landscape that doesn't really. I feel like it doesn't fit as well into a writing medium because it lacks details in a sense. Because what I just say is I say my monastery, my home, my court, and my tower. I don't say like I can't like there's no other details. So it's and there was that video that I posted in the storytelling uh, channel of the writers server that talked about soft and hard world building. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh
Future
my
me's
gosh.
me's
But the thing
newest.
is, what I was thinking is like, this works so much better in film because you have sort of this, you can have like a visual absence in a way. Whereas in writing, he used like the maker of this video used Tolkien as someone who used more hard world building. And like the Silmarillion is just like all world building, hard world
Yeah.
building. It's like 300 pages of world building. So uh, I was like, oh, but I don't make films. I mean, I have photography experience, but that's it. I don't have like that sort of outreach, or it's like all sort of in my brain. So
Well, I didn't have it till I developed it, if I have it. Um, but even with writing, uh, I think it's a misconception to leave, or to even just mainly. I mean, obviously, it's more so there, but it's also largely in fiction writing and novel writing. Show don't tell.
yeah,
That's not just a visual thing. Um, and so, learning if you can write novels, if you can write books, and you can show not tell, then like if you can develop that skill, you will be quite the writer.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, I've done show not telling, sort of, because I have a lot of, I have a decent amount of short story experience, but I feel like just saying these certain objects just wouldn't work for the reader, you know?
well, that's what I'm
So
saying. Of you
I would have to find a middle
you
ground.
craft the experience that is happening at the monastery to reflect the spiritual kind memory
Right.
blocks. You craft whatever is because you're in complete control of
That's true.
everything in it, and so it's being clever and yeah, not just like having some situation or saying he sees something that makes it all click.
Right.
It's less on the nose. It's a less you got to have a little bit of faith in your audience to make those connections. But I think those subtler ones are a bit more powerful. So I think
Right.
they go a little more into the subconscious than this just conscious. Like, aha, that's he's
Yeah.
obviously correlating this to the
Yeah.
so we're just like, oh, this there's something with this monastery that just like it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And figuring out what exactly it is, how exactly to do that.
Yeah.
What I said is just conceptual. It's not, uh, exactly how to do it.
Yeah. I
I,
guess I'll have to
I think you
tinker
do
with,
good at that.
yeah. I think I'll
Yeah.
have to see how I can tinker with maybe I can make soft world building happen. I don't know. That's the weird part that I'll have to figure out. Um, but I'm used to a more hard world building. That's sort of how I was taught to do writing. Because I took a couple of writing classes in school. So it's how I was more so taught to write and do short stories. So to like, it seems like I have to switch my cognizance in a way. It's like, oh, I have to shift these gears a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I'm a bit like that in the other way. I think I start out a little soft world building,
mhm.
and it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
And then as it goes, then I really flesh it out, and then, or at least that's how this process has been. You know, at first it
Mhm.
was just whatever the story that was revealed to me, the story that I saw when I was listening to these songs and
Mhm.
whatnot. And now there's, you know, I got all these note pages on my phone of the different houses and groups and locations and all these different characters and all this stuff. And so
Yeah. Right.
it's definitely progressed into that hard,
Mhm.
almost said hard magic, but hard world building.
That's a different one. And the thing that was interesting is that person also did a video about hard and soft magic and the difference. There was the same YouTuber, and I was like, ah, but Tolkien uses the softer magic, which I love. That's just gonna be in there as well.
You should buy his book,
Which one? The
Future Hello Future Me's book
oh, he actually has one.
on world building.
Oh,
Yeah, it just came out. So everything that he's ever done on YouTube, I
oh,
believe,
nice.
as far as I understand, is in his new book.
Let me
Um,
get my.
yeah, I need to get it as well now that I'm getting more into potential novel writing. Um,
Yeah. Um. Someone also. I think it was Kevin talking with him because he's written a bunch. Um. And it was Stephen King's book on writing, and
hmm,
I also think I'll snag that. But I also just got two books that I think will be helpful, because they discuss a lot of archetypal stuff. So one of them is archetypes. So I think it goes over six archetypes, and then the other one is the sacred and the profane. Can't remember the author's name, but I'm gonna have those books soon. So I think those have been like ones that I've been thinking about getting for a while, and now I summer, so I have time to just like dig into a bunch of reading and stuff. So that's like all I've been doing, either reading or writing or watching a YouTube video and learning from that as well. So it's just like
I
it's
feel
been
yeah.
yeah. And yeah, that's I still don't know how I'll totally conquer the poetry issue because I think I would definitely want to publish some of my poetry at some point, just like have a nice mass of it and just like be like, all right, stick it in a book and uh,
Out there.
yeah. Um, but some of it's really weird because um, when I'm writing it, it's just like it's this weird, almost like pseudo prayer in a sense. Um,
Hmm.
I'm thinking about how to explain because I don't. It's mythological in the sense that like in Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, you never see anyone pray, and that's also the same here. Like I don't like in a lot of the poems, I just don't have God at all, but I have lots of symbols that would be referencing to something higher, maybe something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
I
there's some that I'm like very explicit, with something very detailed. I'm just like, yes.
I think that's fine. Um, I mean, I come from the songwriting side of it, and so like most of my music is not explicitly, you know, talking about God and the faith, and but it is.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't need to be on the nose. To
Right.
not being on the nose doesn't make it pseudo
Yeah, I mean, I
whatever.
couldn't find a, a better word, but
Word,
yeah,
word.
it's mythological and symbolic rather than
It's
allegorical.
powerful, man. That's a
But
way to get it out.
the one that was what's been nice is that I've been able to use some of the really weird dreams that I've had and just like notch stuff in and like um one of them was uh I'm actually using for the writing prompt right now. I found some light, and so, but instead I'm using sort of like this orb, colorful orb that leads into this other area, and then golden orbs sort of come out of this pool from these pillars that sort of the character. There's no character, but it's just the narrator more or less. Even though it's first person, it just barely talk about um, a body at all, except when the gold is dripping down the forearms and stuff like that. So, but I'm almost done with it. But I'm also trying to like see how much I can get out of it because sometimes I there's like some poems where I'm just like it's done, but then I'm like this one I was like it's done, but I was like let's just have another section where I continue and just like see how far I can get.
Yeah.
Because it becomes, and I never say that basically the pool is in a church, but I reference lots of church and
So this is, you told me about this one, I
yeah,
think,
the yeah
when
the
I was in New Orleans.
yeah the dream where I jumped into this like pool. Yeah,
It was like these lights, and then you're in this like
yeah.
bottom area, and there's another pool, and there's all your sister was there, I think, and
No, it was a priest. So it was
a
the
priest. Okay.
yeah. So it was so basically the dream was I was sitting at mass and it was during the homily and it was either I it was never really I couldn't tell exactly who it was. It was either because it could be two people. It was either my priest in Maine or the deacon in New Jersey, and this was the church in New Jersey. Uh, and the and so during the homily, there's just like this sort of like crack and like pool in part of the like pretty like much the center of the church, and he just like midway through the homily he just jumps in,
Oh yeah.
and
Word.
there was like no one else around that jumped in as well. I was just like, I guess I decided to go in, and
Might as
there's like
well.
all of this water and these lights around, and and we went around for a bit. There was nothing like said, but then I came out. The church was empty, but then the water started to rise
That's,
come
yeah.
out, but it didn't break the church, and it filled up all the way. And then it was like floodgates open, so like all of these doors opened,
Hmm.
and all of the water came rushing out, and the church was fine, but like everything else got like flooded. It
Yeah.
was like the weirdest thing. So I'm modifying that dream. So I'm adding like these orbs and then like the golden orb in the water and then bringing that up. It's I've liked it so far. It's like for me, poetry is just daydreaming.
Word.
Like I just
Yeah.
sort of daydream through the writing process. I'm just like in this little world, um, and like sometimes it's been hard because I would focus on something difficult um, that's been bothering me psychologically. Um, but that also is really a helpful way for me to go over those things as well. Like the
Totally.
monastery one, like that sort of part and the memories. Um, a lot of that is that's sort of a one of those that was really hard for me to write because I was just like in this weird psychological state where it's like, oh, this sucks so much, but I gotta write it because it'll just I know it'll help me, and it's been helpful to do that. So yeah, that's been
Is there like a hurt there, or like what do you mean by hard?
for that one, yeah. Um, like going over something that was really hard in my
Just
past
like
and stuff like that.
reopening the wound to fix it right kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, and it was
Right.
like it was a better. It's like it's that sort of it's a weird like healing process for that. Just writing for that, and then just like thinking about it for a bit, and then being like, all right, this is pretty much set. The there's no scab anymore. There's just like there might be a little bit of scar tissue, but that's fine.
Yeah.
The poem's more or less the scar tissue,
It's
but it
amazing.
doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it's amazing what putting it on the page can do.
Yeah,
It's really wild how effective it is.
yeah. It's a weird thing. And I was looking up about I'd heard this weird difference that with lefties and the difference in the language cortex or like the language
Hmm.
processing area. So there was something they did a study, and there was like a third of lefties have language processing in both the left and right hemisphere, where it's in righties it's always more or less um, in the left hemisphere.
Yeah.
I was like, hmm, it sounds like me, because it's all like when I write a lot of my stuff, it's all like very emotion and like, and sometimes it's almost like half of me sort of speaks to me like focus on this thing, um, like a particular object that I've thought about before, like the blocks were like that. So I was like, think about bricks, and then it evolved to blocks and whatnot. Some of it actually, I think there were bricks mentioned in that poem, and so I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, memory is almost like concrete. There's a
Hmm.
time when you can mold it effectively,
Hmm.
um, but then there's
It
also
sets.
yeah, it sets, and then there's you know 5 months or like 5 years after a memory has happened, you can't really do much about it.
Yeah.
But then there was the narrator trying to chisel out the things that I didn't like. But then I was like, hold on a second.
Hmm.
My monastery is leaking.
Yeah.
It's not solid.
It's falling
And
apart
so
now.
then I was like, all right, what am I going to do about all of these leaky blocks in my buildings? And I was like, all right, we're going to make a new one and we're going to put the hammer and chisel in the new block, and then there'll be no more hammer and chisel. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So like that's
Huh.
how I think about memory now. That's it's so weird
I
like
dig
that
that.
I've
I
just
like that
been
a
like,
lot.
oh, I just think about memories this way. And it's just how it's like a psychic tool of like personifying something and making it a tool for myself.
I think we probably all, not all, maybe all. I feel like most of us probably have those things,
Yeah.
but you're conscious of it. And so you're able to uh, use it a little more um, at your control to where I think people have those like conscious decisions or conscious correlations,
Hmm.
but then they let it kind of slip back into to where if you really note it and you really recognize that about yourself,
Yeah.
you can really dive into it and explore it as you obviously have.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a couple other poems where I've like used the same symbols for stuff. Um, I try and use like similar symbols. I mean, sometimes I try and make new ones. Like today, the golden orb was a new one. um, that was nice. Just like finding new golden orb. Um, and that is what for me represents my faith. So for me, that's Catholicism, and that's like the golden orb. And there's at a point um, where it sort of morphs a bit and changes, and it's a uh, it's it's weird, but it's fun.
Something, yeah, I mean, with the whole, sound like a jackass, but the whole red tail hawk thing,
Yeah,
uh, is just like a weird. So what I was gonna say is just that, it's my opinion, and this is involved with my testimony. It's my opinion that the Almighty speaks in the way that you will hear. Um, we're all real different as far as what is salient and what is meaningful or impactful, what we're paying attention to. Um, and so, yeah, I see, you have your way of paying attention, or of, well, what the heck was that? That was weird. Huh, to where most people would just like, it's just whatever. And then they would have some crazy thing and I'd be like, that's whatever. That wouldn't have caught my attention at all. Or
hmm
um and it doesn't stop there. It's not just like, oh, some weird sign or symbol, but this just like pattern. Or yeah, I don't know. It gets into woo, or metaphysics or whatever. But
yeah,
yeah, I just see that that kind of stuff is, it's not a accident. It's not, and it's not always like our imagination or our, cleverness. It's like it's there for a reason,
yeah,
and we recognized it for a reason. So you need to lean into that, and that's why I think that it's really cool that you have recognized the kind to be able to lean into it and expand, and be able to ask what is this for?
yeah. I
Or
feel like
what am I supposed to get from this,
yeah.
kind of
I
thing.
mean, for me, I don't think woo is really that bad as long as it's directed right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Um,
there's a level of woo that's obviously a part of this,
and
even in
I think
physics and whatnot.
a lot of symbols sort of work in that sense. And um, and I I guess going back a bit, I feel like sometimes it's just my right brain will like conjure up like images sometimes and be like, oh, think about this weird image, and then like sends it over to the left brain, and the left brain's like, I don't know.
Get rid of it.
And then like my right brain just tinkers with it for a while until the left brain can be like, okay, this is pretty good, this is acceptable. And then
Gadzooks.
yeah, it's like this like it's like a ping pong game. Yeah, it's like back and forth and
Where his right brain's over here playing, bouncing the ball on his paddle, and the left brain's like, I don't want to play. Fine, I'll just play by myself. And then finally, left brain's like, okay, come on, send it over. Let's
yeah,
play.
yeah, yeah. Maybe it's like a ball of clay, because like ball of clay, like it would change every time you hit it. So like right brain's changing it every time or whatever it hits, and then the left brain's finally like, ah, you got a decent sized sphere there now.
I guess I can.
I'm I'm
Funny.
I'm sort of messing with the analogy now, but it doesn't really work too well. But yeah,
All analogies meet their end.
yeah. Although sometimes you can end up killing it if you uh, maybe abuse it in a sense and just use it too much. So
Self-control.
find like a limit where like something can and cannot be used in a way. I don't know.
And that's like that's like an entrance to the hippie woo phase, is like not having that self-control, to where it just
Right,
goes um,
right.
to whatever degree,
Yeah,
which is, it's to some extent is fine, because a lot of times that phase ends, from my experience, and from I'm Southern Oregon, so I see it a lot.
that's all
And a
there.
lot of
Yeah.
times, yeah, but a lot of times it if you abandon it, you come out better, and you come out recognizing, like you before would have, could have been some, like, whatever, nothing's going on around us kind of thing. And then afterward, you may be an atheist or something, but you would see Jonathan Pajot's channel, and you'd see a video and you'd be like,
Yeah,
that he has a point there,
yeah,
despite, so it's a bit of a conditioning to, um, away from, it's like the unbrainwashing of uh, the modernity.
yeah. Well, I was gonna point out Orthodox icons and like the symbols that they have. It's constrained to
hmm,
that sense. Like they're not gonna take it out and have like the a certain symbol mean almost everything. Like
Word.
the cross can mean a lot, but it can't be like completely everything. I mean, you
Yeah.
could try and I mean the cross is one that maybe you could try and I wouldn't blame you for that, but maybe like um there's like symbols like the Immaculate Heart of Mary and like you can't like morph that into everything, you know? So and that's where I think the woo can be too much if you try and force it
Yeah.
um, in a cognitive way of like thinking of everything that could possibly fit into it in a sense. Like, no, this is what it means. It's more of like having a collection of symbols rather than having one that fits everything and tells a whole message.
Yeah.
It's like I have a group of friends, and like my blocks, my concrete blocks mean specific thing, and then my hammer and chisel mean another thing, And then there's it's like I have a bunch of friends in a way. I bet you people are thinking, man, this guy has like split personality or something.
These are all my friends, the blocks and the hammer and the chisel, and we have some great conversations. Just to say. Come on. Yeah, come on. Here be a mouth.
You could always show your cat like Jeff.
Yeah. Random tail.
That was amazing. He was just acting like it was just a normal day. I was just like, all right. That was pretty cool.
You been working on any music?
Well, took a little bit of a break, like a tiny bit. I didn't do too much um, before I went backpacking. Um, I mean, I've just been practicing piano a bit. I really haven't branched out much. I've just been trying to like do Little Fugue by Bach. I'm just like, I like this. I mostly picked it because I'm afraid of sharp key signatures because low brass, you never see key signatures, and if you do, you gotta be scared
It's
because
very difficult to play, or
it's just you don't really think in sharp when you're too much when
mm,
you're playing tuba or trombone. It's like programmed in to play E flat and not F sharp or whatever. I mean, sometimes F sharp is the most common sharp, but or like C sharp. Like I never really play C sharp. It's just like, ugh.
just
So
sneaks in.
yeah, but what'll but pianos have a lot of sharp key signatures in their pieces because it's just easier. You just hit a black key,
Yeah.
a specific black key, rather than having to think about changing your embouchure and pushing down different keys. So um, yeah, but that is in it's in B flat, so it's just two flats, and I'm like, that's my favorite key signature. So it's like I'll just do this, even though it's a really hard piece and a beginner probably shouldn't play this, but whatever.
Dive into the deep end.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that too often, but
It seems like you got enough know-how to be able to do that. To where
maybe
that'd be a
I don't
different story
know.
for me.
Maybe
I drowned in that deep end.
nonsense. Most people can swim in the deep end. They just don't want to do it. That's
Yeah,
what I
maybe.
think. What about you? Music?
A tiny bit. I I got this guy recently.
Right? You showed me. Yeah.
Haven't really been using it all that much. Well, I just don't know how to play the piano, and so there's that. But I've learned a bit just by playing the you know A through L home row keyboard with Logic,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
so that developed enough to be able to do like small kind chord work, um, very basic stuff. So yeah, I haven't really played or made any music. A little bit of dabbling with this thing and new headphones and
We gotta get the Paul Vanderklay stuff going.
yeah, that's difficult though.
It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna take a
Yeah,
while, but that's okay.
yeah. Um, yeah, I'm trying to make a push to release some beats that I've made.
Hmm.
Just get that ball rolling. But I gotta go back and mix and master um, some stuff and make some tweaks. I don't know. It's easy. I go through phases of being like disillusioned or potentially, uh, you know, having a moment of clarity.
Hmm.
I'm just like, I don't know. It gets frustrating, but it's also really fun.
Yeah.
Just trying to pursue it is frustrating.
Yeah. Music is always. I mean, I'm always around it in a sense. Like I, there isn't really a time that I'm not really listening to music,
Same.
except if I'm like, unless I'm reading something. But even then, sometimes I'll just be like, just throw on something that doesn't have lyrics, and I'll
That's
just.
what I do.
So it's like I never really escape from it, and I was thinking about how music is one of the forms of art and expression that is mostly not permanent. Um, the only difference now is that we have recording systems, but when I when I'm practicing, I don't record myself every time because most of the time it just sounds pretty awful. Um, so, and like if
It
I re-
is.
and like when I practice brass, doesn't like no one wants to hear me play exercise 2 of warm ups for half an hour because I'm like practicing warm ups for a group or something, you know. Like that happened a lot when I was doing drum and bugle corps. It was just a lot of like learning how to play these different exercises. So like half my time or more than half my time was practicing these exercises and they're not fun to listen to. So and then it's also like the it's weird because since it's impermanent, I think it means so much to us in a way. Like when people think of like sometimes people are like, "Oh, this concert, you know, it was amazing," um, but they don't have a recording of it. Really, most people don't, you know, and it's unlikely that that concert is recorded. So it's like, where does this meaning from the impermanence of it come from?
It's a similar thing with photography for me. There's, it's easy to get caught up in, especially now with social media and stuff, of like some pressure to, like, oh, this should be on my story, or, I need to document this for my people or whatever, you know. Um, but there's just moments that are for me,
Yeah.
and they're not for anyone else. They were just for me to, where like some crazy thing will happen and it's developing slow enough that I could get my phone out or my camera out and, capture at least some of it.
Hmm.
But then there's this, I don't know what it is, but there's, some little voice that's like, no, just
Right.
enjoy it, or a sunset.
Right.
Because it's easy and you miss it when you uh, put on that artist hat, um, when you become a curator instead
Hmm.
of just this person who's soaking in this moment.
Right.
It's a different thing. It's like watching a movie while you're also on your phone texting or something off and on.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you watched it, but you missed this little bit. And
Yeah.
this little bit turns out to be like the most important thing.
Yeah. Or like if you do that a bunch of times in a movie, you're missing lots of little
Exactly.
bits.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, that's interesting. You brought in social media. I think that could be. I mean, that's probably one of the. I think that's one of the serious detriments of it is that well, it's not living in the present, right? And you're just and it also puts like if you're with someone else when you're viewing the sunset on a mountain for that moment it puts a barrier between you and that person and maybe
Yeah.
like that's going to be maybe they were about to start an important conversation with you
Yeah.
but you decide to pull out your phone.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I don't like social media. The only one that I like is Discord,
That's
but
the
that's
only one
like
I use.
it's a that's the weird part about Discord is that it's at least the server, the Frigid meeting servers. It's probably the most genuine um, social media that for me for a while I was like almost unaware that it was like a social media platform for a bit. I was like, hmm. Like, and then like
This is just community.
I realized, oh yeah, this is actually a social media platform, but it's not like the constant dopaminergic hit
Yeah.
of yeah. It's not that like cycle like Instagram or Snapchat.
Unless you do that, because you can clear unreads You can
Oh, yeah.
clear, you can play that game as well.
The working game.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
like that stuff is a similar dopamine kind of like, hmm, I read everything there's to read. Even if I didn't read it, even if I just,
Yeah.
and I feel like we've talked about this before, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I've done that before. I'm just like, I'm gonna scroll to the bottom and see like maybe the last two messages or something.
yeah, it's the relief of having that cleared off of the list
Yeah.
of unread kind. So there's, yeah, but it's especially this server is much more oriented to community and uh,
Right.
legit interaction.
Yeah.
Um,
Having longer interactions.
yeah,
And that's because I was thinking about it. I was like, if someone, on the Discord like was walking down my street, I'd be like, oh my gosh, hey. Like even though
yeah,
I've never met them in real life, it's like there's some people that I've talked to, like especially on the voice channel, like a bunch, but like never met them in person, but I have like this pretty serious connection with them.
yeah,
Um, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is like it's a weird connection. It's much deeper than like a lot of other platforms. Like you wouldn't get that from Instagram because that's like a sidewalk puddle of surfaceness.
yeah. There's less, yeah, there's less. I mean, obviously, whatever humans are involved in, there's going to be posturing, but um, because it's less of a curating an image thing, there's less room to posture.
Right.
To where on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you're choosing the images that you're sharing, and that's like the main content is these images with these, and so there's a bit more, yeah, just posturing of who you want to put yourself out there as, to where with the Discord, it's focused on, you know, dialectic kind. And so it's,
Honesty too. Yeah.
yeah. And you could still posture, but you would have to work a heck of a lot harder
Yeah.
to do that in these paragraphs.
Yeah. And then
Um,
people would probably also try and call you out on it, be like, hey, stop virtue signaling and stuff
yeah.
like that.
Or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, still got the social media
Right.
danger side of it, but
Yeah.
it's the one that I can deal with at
Yeah.
this
I
point
was just
still.
like, yeah. Oh, I just have slowly just started to like resent and sort of hate all the other social media. I'm just like, no, this is not it anymore. And it's weird, but man, I guess that's like also circling into like today's politics and all that mumbo jumbo that's been going on in the world. It's just like, oh man, I feel I feel bad for, I guess, especially right now for people who are like just always checking stuff. Like I would go insane if I looked at everything in the news today. Like I don't know how some people don't lose their mind. I mean,
Yeah,
even I'm not like that neurotic, but I would be toast. So
yeah, that there's a lot to worry about.
yeah, there's and then it's all like really unconscious. But I wanted to. This is like a little bit back, but I was thinking about when you were talking about the unconscious sort of symbols. It made me think of some of the things that I've read that have like unconsciously changed me until like a while ago. Then I was like, oh, this is uh, seriously changing me. Uh, one of them is Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. When I was reading that through, I realized like it. Um, this was like sort of after I had gotten through like a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff and um, like watched a ton of his videos, read the book and all that, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on to Tolkien for a bit. I mean, I was still watching Jordan Peterson, but like as I was reading it, it was this weird journey, and then during that, during actually the journey of Lord of the Rings, is when I decided, oh, what's this was like in November. I was like, oh, maybe I should go back to church. It's just like, oh,
Hmm.
and like I still don't know exactly what to make of it. Um, except like the interesting coincidence that Tolkien obviously imbued a lot of symbolism that's very Christian, and I turned more into like because of Stoicism and Jordan Peterson. Before that, I had you know turned more towards uh, agnostic slash theist sort of person that was seriously considering all of these strange questions, whereas before I was just like, I don't know, there's probably something, but I was indifferent,
Yeah.
and but I wasn't going to throw out any serious claims of Jesus or God, so it was like, this is interesting. So it's that that's something I've been thinking about recently. And the more like I'm reading the Silmarillion now, there's just like so much symbolism. It's just like boom, boom, boom. It's like, oh my gosh, like Tolkien, you're blowing my mind. Like, but even like, what I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna read the Silmarillion, then I'm gonna just read the Lord of the Rings again, and just like have that on the back burner of my books. Just like pick it up every week or something, and just like read for half an hour and make it
Yeah.
like just a nice long journey. Because before I was like reading an hour a day, just like Tolkien. I was just like boom, but then I was like, oh, it just there's just so much there. I'm like, wow, he's he's like the I think we talked about it. He's like the granddaddy of fantasy. He's just like
Yep. I'm gonna say not many have done it like he did, and he
yeah.
definitely changed things with the way that he did it. That you would really like the Ryan Reeves's series on
On
Lewis and
Tolkien.
Tolkien.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other like little like there's books about Tolkien's mythology
Yeah,
and stuff like that that I'm gonna, and I also want to read his letters and stuff like that because like those were published and that has a lot of other explanations to things,
yeah,
um, which just are really cool.
yeah. It and he talks a little bit about some of that. I just think that you, with the way that you like Tolkien, find it real quick.
Ryan Reeves, you said?
Yeah, he's a professor at Gordon Conwell.
Oh, okay, nice. I feel like I've heard of the book before, or not the book, but I feel like I've heard of him, or I don't know. It
Yeah,
sounds
I we
familiar.
talked about I was going through he was talking about John Calvin and
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther. And so I was
Oh,
watching a part of that with share. There we go. So I was talking about that with you. You had said that you were a Tolkien kind guy, and so I had shared that playlist. I hadn't watched it yet, and then I disclaimed that he was a reformed kind, and so
Okay.
I don't know if he's gonna have a good take on Catholic kind, but he did, and he does, and just yeah, it's a really good, and you can listen to it at 2 times speed, the way that he talks. You can still understand it, so that's cool. So it's like half an hour each.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I learned a lot about them though,
Yeah.
their lives and the background behind some of those books.
Yeah. It's just like a Mariana's Trench of
Yeah, that's true.
all sorts of stuff. It's just like, oh,
Yeah,
you just have everything and all the like weird creatures. Yeah. Yeah, those. Oh, I totally forgot about that. So back to poetry. I'm gonna
hmm.
circle back there. Because I remembered sort of a symbol that I have, but I haven't actually written about it. I call it my submarine. It's when I go into the deeps and like, and that's when I write. I write in my submarine, and I find all the little weird things, weird creatures. Like, oh, there's like a anglerfish, but it's a little bit different. Face looks a little bit different. Something like that.
Yeah, it's like land is the conscious, and the the seas, the ocean is
Right.
uh, the unconscious,
And that
and
that's
it's like 70% or maybe more, 90-some% unexplored,
yeah. We have
literally,
a
like in our
we
world.
have a better map of the moon than of the
Word,
ocean floor,
yeah.
which is just like,
So
oh.
yeah, that's a perfect analogy or metaphor or whatever that is.
Yeah,
Going into
yeah,
especially with poetry, yeah, going into the subconscious and
yeah,
finding all this crazy crap and
yeah,
crafting it in a way that the people up on the land will be able
yeah.
to
That's the goal.
understand
Sometimes
it.
it doesn't really work.
Yeah,
I've noticed that, like, or sometimes it's like I found something that's like really ugly that I'm like, nah, we're gonna write about it, but I'm gonna keep it in the sub. So
hey man, that stuff is a lot of the stories that I tell are, you know, the running title for them is "Come Look How Dumb Caleb Is," or "Come Look How Dumb Caleb Was," at least.
yeah,
Uh, so I wouldn't. I'd be careful of shying away from your shit, um, because it's
well,
powerful, and it's that kind of honesty is uh, admirable, and it's helpful to other people. It's the purpose of the poets, of the artists, is to not to show people that they're not alone in some of this shit, and to see how the shit can be overcome, or you know how sometimes it turns into this beautiful surprise or whatever. Something that you
yeah,
thought was shit actually turns out to be this blessing, or this
yeah,
hidden whole adventure that you thought was going to be the worst thing in the world, and actually changed your life forever. I don't know. So
yeah. I
I say
mean,
all of that to push you towards sharing
well,
that kind of stuff.
the the blocks in the memory poem, that is mostly like me being like, oh, like, because the chisel and the hammer, those are unnecessary things. That's why, they're placed in that one when I start making the new queen ones. Um, and that's sort of me telling myself, no, you cannot do this anymore. And you shouldn't, because this is the damage that you end up doing. Your house is going to start to crumble.
Yeah.
And uh, that but there's the only ones that I would ever hide are some that are like that are just personal and on. They're just like they don't have to be. It's weird. It's not like a. I'm not afraid of telling people how dumb I am. It's more so of for the. I don't know exactly how to word it, but it's more so it's a different category of like this is like really just like one of them I wrote about like when I was worried about my friend who was diagnosed with brain cancer. I was like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
write about this, but I'm not gonna really share about it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. If it's not
that's
your
like
story
the
to tell.
only that's really the only um one because it was very when I wrote about it, it was very direct. It was more direct than a lot of the other ones. But I think in some sense I would be willing to remold it into a more symbolic way in which I could actually share it. And I've
Yeah.
actually been thinking about it because I've been there was one um, there was one poem that I was writing on recently. I haven't finished it yet, but it was talking about how the that death is like one of the most binary things, but it's also the most universal. Because like we all know we're gonna die, but we
Yeah.
don't know what's over there. So
Yeah.
it's a mirror in a sense of like we see it, but we're not going over there. And then but then also it started to morph into this my thoughts on like leaps of faith. Because it had like a bridge in it, and I was thinking, oh, this is how I think about leaps of faith. Um, and for me personally, I don't think they're all that necessary. I think basically what you can do is you can have a bridge in between the two. It takes time, but you can have like a bridge just about to here, and then you can just take like a little step.
Step
It
of
can be
faith.
a step of faith, right? It's a step of faith instead of leaping and trying to jump over the whole void
Yeah.
um, and getting sucked down into whatever uh, type of hell befalls you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, just going back a little bit, I would just encourage you that sometimes those stones that you're sure aren't supposed to be shared are actually the cornerstones that, would really keep this whole thing or really uh, uplift the whole structure.
yeah,
Um, so I just, it's a appealing to wisdom instead of fear and being really really honest with yourself in that
hmm
because yeah, that's, in my opinion, that's just where those kind of things is where the most powerful stuff usually comes from. It's when
yeah,
you are courageous and bold to and honest and not like, it's easy to go the other way as well of just like be super self-deprecating and whatever. Like no, being authentic in your situation or in your filth or in your
yeah,
struggle or in your whatever.
yeah,
We need that as far as all the other people. Like it is really, yeah, story. Like it's what fuels all this crap, you know.
yeah,
And so yeah, I just there's definitely wisdom
yeah,
um, in what you share and what you don't. But it's easy to put a lot of stuff in that wisdom camp just because it's like, yeah, it'd be a little bit better if people didn't know that story, or you know, they don't need to know that. That's not, or whatever. I just stuff I've struggled with sharing and then finally shared. I've just seen fruit from that, and so I've, second, not second guessed that, but returned to that And yeah,
Yeah, I haven't
had
looked.
to develop a little courage.
Yeah, I haven't looked at those poems in a while. I was just like, all right, I'm gonna write this down because it needs to get out. Because it's
And
almost
there's
like,
that as well.
yeah, it's just like for me, it's like a therapy. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, get this out, take a little time off, think about it a little bit, then be all right, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you still bothering you, write about it some more. I've, I've more or less solved like at least two big problems just from that. Um, so, and then you were you mentioned stories, and I thought about my map analogy. Um, so
We have arrived
yes,
where this video is going to begin.
where it failed to begin the first
Yeah.
time. Yeah, the so I've been thinking a bunch about maps and the analogy, but I also think a lot about stories. And I was like, what if we just sort of mush the two together and do like story mapping? Um, and like, what are sort of the repeat stories that people hit on? So it's sort of like archetypes, and then like knowing where you sort of are in stories, and then that also that makes me think of the like stories of old um, videos about stories and reality. Um, and in a sense, it's I understand that it's idealistic to think uh, in this sense, but it's also I'm more so thinking of it as a tool because you use a map as a tool to know where you are.
Yeah.
Um, it's like same as a compass. Compass orients you on the map.
Yeah.
You sort of have like the compass in the center, and you're looking around like, okay, there's that mountain over there. There's a ravine over here, and an old mine, and stuff like that. And it just seems like we could use a map that doesn't seem to have a faulty compass. Because I feel like at the moment we have like a bit of a faulty compass, and north is like shifted and it keeps on moving around. Because like when you put a magnet, when you have like two magnets, you can like mess with the compass for a while, and the equilibrium's all off,
Yeah.
and you could like end up going south instead of north.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we've lost some of the stories and our way to relate to them. Um,
Mhm.
I think part of it has to do with religion, but you can, but it's also like we all, in a way, have it because um, I've been reading Jung for the past few days, um, the book Undiscovered Self, and he talks a lot about how more or less no matter how you try and run from religion, it's going to just be in you, or if it's taken out from the atmosphere around you, you'll still have it inside of you. And I'm not going to claim that someone like Sam Harris believes in religion, but he believes in something that puts it on
Religiously.
the map. So he believes in something. I mean, he talks about well-being a lot. It's like, well, Sam, this is almost the same thing, but that's a can of worms that I'm not I'm not super familiar enough to dissect him
Yeah.
in that sense, and not really willing to. I mean, I've read some of his stuff. I read like 30 pages of the Moral Landscape, and in a sense, this is like ripping off his idea because uh, the premise, like the first 30 pages, he talks about like how to sort of imagine um, this landscape, and there's highs and lows in these, and it's based off of morality in a sense. And I'm like, okay, but then like, where do you get the morality? And a lot of that's from stories. For a lot of people, religious stories produce that. But then there's also like, you just sort of have your own story and your own map, and you go around places to other people, and you talk with other people, and you get a little bit of their map. And so this is my idea of like, we need to be able to communicate in a way that we can share each other's maps and have one big map. And that's why in a sense, I like the conversations that we have on the Discord, because you can't have map sharing unless you're having honest discussion and storytelling um, and willing to journey as well, because that's also part of the map. Because sometimes you're going to wander off into the wilderness where you don't know. It's a FedEx truck.
Crash into your
For
house.
anyone wondering, I'm on a porch right now, so I'm gonna bring the mic a little bit closer
You're fine.
on my earbuds, so it doesn't get too loud, and I can be a little bit louder. Beat the FedEx truck. Um, but we have to, yeah. So we have to have the honest dialogue to share maps, and then over time, that's why I really like talking to people, because you get little bits and pieces, and then you walk into, that's where I was, you walk in, sometimes you have to walk into the wilderness, and you have to sort of navigate and do your own mapping while you're going through these strange woods and stuff, you know have encounters with weird animals or something. It's all sort of that. And yeah, maybe I can beat Sam Harris with my story maps. My
Have you
story mapping. That's why I've sort of named it in my head, story mapping.
have you written it out at all?
Written about this? Um, I think I have. Not like in the most complete sense. A lot of this is just like my own brain, just thinking about this when I have nothing else to think about. Just like, all right, how do we solve this issue in a way? Like having this irregular compass with a splotchy map that only has a few ravines and valleys that we don't want to go to, and maybe a couple peaks. But I feel like in a sense, we've modern society has lost the peak of like a saint or something. The almost the individual that has a really strong connection,
So
and then but we know where there's a bunch of valleys and places that we want to avoid. But sometimes I feel like my map, when I'm looking at my map, and there's a bunch of people, especially right now, that have their own compass, and it's going like into this ravine or something. I'm like, why are you guys going there? Like, so it's also the issue of we need to be able to standardize the compass that we have, so that, and be willing to defend it against illogical magnets or something. Because that's like sort of a pathology against the compass.
how do you know your compass is right?
That's the thing. You have to share. That's what you need to do. You need to also share your compass, I think, as well. So you need to be like, hey, this is, and that's where you get more bits. So, like, I think this is the right way. Someone might think, oh, that's like a ravine, but really, to you, it's a mountain. So you need to be able to share the right direction, or the direction that you think is right, and be able to be willing to actually like through dialogue, and maybe if you wanted to, go with that person to either the ravine or the mountaintop.
Hmm.
So that actually was helpful because I hadn't really thought too much about the compass. The compass part of that. I just mostly thought about the story and the story mapping. So
The reason I ask about if you've written it out is just because, yeah, it seems like something that would be very usable um, and
yeah,
effective, but it also is complicated. It's a complicated narrative or whatever to
mhm,
remain within
right,
as you're talking about this.
yeah,
You have to remain in this analogy or whatever.
yeah. It's a
Um,
weird ecosystem.
and so, yeah, so that's why those kind of things are nice to have written out. And so you know exactly what this analogy
Yeah,
is and
yeah.
how to
Outline, yeah,
traverse it. So you need a
outline the
map of
parts. Yeah,
the whole map
yeah,
analogy.
yeah. I need the map. I need to map out my analogy. But yeah, that's more or less my spiel on maps and um, just why I like them. And I think it's almost like the probably one of the most, I guess, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but my most meta analogy I've come up with. So,
It's
but
your project.
I mean, I probably could turn it into a project and see it. I mean, the thing is, I wouldn't be able to do it alone, is what I think. Because, I mean, it's based off of discussing with other people, right?
Community. Yeah.
So I would need to have a lot of people to be able to be like, all right, here's my compass,
Almost
and
like a bridge of people or
here's
something.
yeah, and here's my little chunk of land that I've mapped out. But we need to like get them all together, be willing to have that. So, but then it
Seems
might
like
just be impossible because there's some people that just might refuse. So
yeah.
I don't
I mean, yeah, obviously not everyone's going to use it. Um,
know, right?
not everyone should use it, but it's a tool nonetheless.
Yep.
I dig it as much as I get it.
I feel like I'm just starting to understand other bits of the analogy. Like I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought too much about the compass. The only thing that I've thought about before was we need to have a compass. And before I was like, we need to have it off the map so that it's more like solid state in a way. It's not gonna get messed up. Because like if you look at a map, um, like a map of any area, you'll have like the compass that's pointing north, but then you'll have like the relative north and then the magnetic north, and you have to adjust the compass for that. Uh, that's just technical differences, but that actual compass that you're referencing is off the map. It's not like sometimes they are actually built into the map and the actual picture of the map, but
Rose kind of thing.
either way, it's a solid state. So
Yeah, I dig it. You should definitely flesh that out.
yeah,
I mean, I don't mean like a this really needs fleshing out, man. I just mean like, no, that you're onto something.
I think it has potential, and I
Yeah,
think the fact that I just learned something about it means that it has something to it. Um, yeah, yeah. I guess that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. Yeah,
mapping out the maps.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if I have anything else. I feel like
Covered it.
I feel like I hit it now. I tried to start this out before, didn't work, but that's okay. The gears turned this time, so the engine ignited. The spark plugs went. The engine got revving. Yeah.
Hey, it takes the most momentum at the start, so
Yeah.
it'll only get easier.
All right. All right. Well,